Now, the only person who can fully understand the full depth of slavery is an African American. The only person who can understand the full depth of colonialism is an African.
Labeled a racist. White people, I read this really funny quote that said, like, white people care more about being labeled a racist than actually fighting racism. Like, it's not a big deal. Just like how when your parents, I mean, it is a big deal, but, you know, just like how when your parents tell you, like, oh, if you did something wrong, just admit it. You won't get in as much trouble if you admit it, and then we, like, work on it. It's the same thing. Admit it. Fucking admit it. Admit it, white people. And black people, too. Admit that your white girlfriend or your white boyfriend is probably a racist, you know, because it gets black people's backs up too, you know. And Dr. Joy has some really great theories about that as well, you know. She says that she's able to continuously feel for white people and their emotions because she still retains her humanity unlike them. You know, I have a quote written here where she says, since I still retain my humanity, I can imagine how hard it is for them. But at the same time, I'm angry that I have empathy for white people, right? We have empathy for them. We have empathy for them. Black people have empathy for everyone. Black people have empathy and sympathy for everyone. We want to let everybody come be in our club. That's why it's so crazy to me when people be like, oh, black people are racist. Black people don't want to let people do this. They don't want to let people do that. Like, no, I'm sorry. We try to fucking be nice to everyone because we do know what it's like to be excluded, and we do still retain our humanity, all right? And I feel like we fucking care about other people too much in some instances, especially white people, because in addition to retaining our humanity and therefore our ability to feel for others, black people have also been conditioned to maintain white fragility. We've been conditioned to worry about white feelings. We've been conditioned to go out of our way to be nice to white people, to make sure that white people are comfortable, and to continue to insulate them from race-based stress, because you know what happens if white people get upset. Used to be a lynching, now it's a police shooting, all right? And black people are experts at appropriate adaptation, which is when you adjust your behavior for survival in a hostile environment. Y'all 500 years of basically oppressing and brutalizing other human beings. In addition to stripping themselves of their own humanity through their oppression of black people, that they have also developed an appetite for brutality. And this is the part that really struck me in her lecture. You know, she says, you know, they've developed an appetite for brutality. They've developed an appetite for oppression. They've developed a voracious appetite for racism. They hunger for it. They yearn for it. And what happens to an appetite for like that? You know, what happens to an appetite for brutality? What happens when you can rape, torture, murder, and beat someone to death for hundreds of years and then just buy another one, right? That you could lynch a man, burn his body, cut off his genitals, and display them on a mantle or a postcard and not be seen as savage or uncivilized. Where does the savagery go? Right? Where does that taste for blood? Hundreds of years. Hundreds. Where does that go? Where do you guys think that went after slavery? Centuries and centuries of pathology don't just go away because, you know, in the last 100 years we've decided that that kind of behavior is unacceptable. You know, where does it go? Where does it go? People love to say that if we just stop talking about racism, it'll go away, which is nonsense, because where does it go? Where can it go? It'll just disappear? No, it just mutated into something else. And it's funny because Dr. Joy theorizes that at least 5% of the police population are sadistic psychopaths and sociopaths that deliberately signed up because of this taste, this appetite for brutality. And that's millions of people. 5%? 5% of every police force in the country? You know, racism is it's a pathology. It's a disease. It's a mental illness. You know, YouTuber Chescali, she has a great video where she's talking about, you know, if you get cancer and you go to the doctor and the doctor's like, oh, I'm so sorry you have cancer. And you say, what are we going to do? And the doctor says, we're just going to not talk about it and hope it goes away. She would look at the doctor like, this? Like, you know, and racism is a mental illness. It's a disease. You know, it is. It's taught. It's a disease that's handed down, You know, Albert Einstein called racism a disease of white people, you know, that's been, you know, embedded and woven into the fabric of our society. It's been handed down. I don't believe that babies are born racist. Babies don't know a baby knows who picks him up, who puts him down, who feeds him, who hugs him, who takes care of him. You know, as we saw for years and years, you had black women that were the nursemaids and the nannies and the this and the that. And there was, the baby was like, whoa, you have black skin, like, don't touch me. Like, no, like, racism is a learned illness. It is a learned illness, and it's been developed and refined over the years, and it's mutated. It's mutated to keep up with the time, okay? Because that type of oppression and that type of brutality and that type of savagery and that type of mental illness doesn't just go away, you know? Oppression is a disease that has to be treated. So assuming that it's just going to go away is preposterous. You know, that type of pathology doesn't go away. You have to treat it, you know. And whenever we discuss racist incidents, there's always an insistence that it's an isolated act. You know, it's a random act of racism, like how they say it was a random act of violence. It was a random act of racism, you know. And it's not part of any type of larger systemic issues with racism in this country, right? And so, for example, SAEOU gets to be about a few bad apples instead of about a widespread system of racism across the country, because how do you dismantle an entire system? How do you dismantle an entire system? You know? People love to say like, oh, my hometown used to be racist, but it's not anymore. We've gotten so much better. How did you get so much better? You think all those people just fucking packed up and moved away and disappeared? And took their pathology with them? Racism doesn't disappear. Just because it became wrong or taboo to do racist things publicly or to talk about people using racial slurs does not mean that racist sentiment disappeared, okay? Racism is a pathology within white people. And pathology doesn't go away overnight. There has to be years and years of work to get into understanding pathology. And it's funny because when we're talking about bipolar disorder or multiple personality disorder or narcissistic personality disorder, no one would ever say, it'll go away. It'll disappear. Let's just wait. Let's just wait and see. No, we treat it. But with racism and the particular pathology of racism that is a part of white culture and is ingrained within white American culture, people just wave it away like it's just going to go away, you know? And it's funny also because white people love to talk about black culture this and black culture that and black culture is so bad and blah, 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 blah. But they refuse to talk about white culture and the pathology of racism that is the core of white American culture. People ask me, what is white culture? I say white culture is brutality. White culture is oppression. White culture is rape, it's genocide, it's murder. Brutality and racism is ingrained in white culture. It is white culture. And since they are the dominant group in this country, and I don't care about how much influence niggas have on music or fashion or pop culture, because in terms of wealth and health, whites are still the dominant social group. Don't get it twisted. It is ingrained. Racism and brutality and pathology are ingrained within our dominant American culture because that is white culture. Look at the movies. Look at the video games, okay? Whites love violence. They love it. They love it. And they can't hang niggas anymore, so they're going to find it somewhere else. You understand what I'm saying? You know? You know, and I know I'm going to have people that want to argue with me about this. I'm not going to argue because while this is my opinion, it is my informed opinion. And it is based off of facts and statistics. And it's not debatable. And I'm not debating with any of you because I'm right. And if you don't agree, I don't give a fuck. It's true. What I'm saying is true. It's supported by research, and it's been proven time and time again. Like I said earlier, we can all for the most part admit that we are living in a racist, white supremacist society. So it's really only natural to come to the conclusion that that must mean that all white people are racists because they're simply a product of their environment. Right? Yet when you say that, it gets people's backs up, even black people, because nobody wants to be labeled a racist. No white person wants to be labeled a racist. White people, I read this really funny quote that said, like, white people care more about being labeled a racist than actually fighting racism. Like, it's not a big deal. Just like how when your parents, I mean, it is a big deal, but, you know, just like how when your parents tell you, like, oh, if you did something wrong, just admit it. You won't get in as much trouble if you admit it, and then we, like, work on it. It's the same thing. Admit it. Fucking admit it. Admit it, white people. And black people, too. Admit that your white girlfriend or your white boyfriend is probably a racist. You know, because it gets black people's backs up, too. You know, and Dr. Joy has some really great theories about that as well, you know. She says that she's able to continuously feel for white people and their emotions because she still retains her humanity unlike them. You know, I have a quote written here where she says, since I still retain my humanity, I can imagine how hard it is for them. But at the same time, I'm angry that I have empathy for white people, right? We have empathy for them. We have empathy for them. Black people have empathy for everyone. Black people have empathy and sympathy for everyone. We want to let everybody come be in our club. That's why it's so crazy to me when people be like, oh, black people are racist. Black people don't want to let people do this. They don't want to let people do that. Like, no, I'm sorry.
Now, the only person who can fully understand the full depth of slavery is an African American. The only person who can understand the full depth of colonialism is an African. You see, colonialism and slavery are the greatest harm that has ever happened to the mass population of black people. You understand? So colonialism and slavery, coincidentally, they were perpetrated and they were orchestrated with one particular individual. The individual was called the white imperialists. These white imperialists were people from Europe. Europe, including Spain. Spain was the first country to colonize Africa, the first country to acquire a colony in Africa. And I think they did this in somewhere in Cape Verde. Cape Verde is in West Africa along the Atlantic. It's a very small island in the Atlantic. So this country was the first country to be colonized by the Spanish. The Spanish people are the French, you understand? Then followed the Portuguese. The Portuguese colonized Africa after they were following up an expedition. They were trying to find a sea route to India because the Ottoman Empire had just blocked the Mediterranean Sea route and the Red Sea route. So it was blocked. They had to go all the way through. So they were just walking through the darkness. They didn't know where they were going until they collided with Africa. Just like Columbus says he collided and discovered America. You can never discover a land with people inside. Are they dead or what? So these are the first instances of colonialism. Colonialism in South Africa began with the Portuguese, began with these guys from Netherlands, people from Holland, Netherlands. The Afrikaners, they came there as settlers. They came to refresh themselves after a long journey, and they decided to stay. Then followed the British. The British was the greatest empire. Till today, Britain is called the Great Britain. It's called great for a reason. Britain can have a part of its country in an island very far away from it. It is called so of British colony, so of British protectorate. You ask yourself, how is Britain attached to this place? Like they are far away. This is a concept of colonialism. You understand? Now, slavery comes in before colonialism. Slavery was the transatlantic slave trade, or if you like, the triangle trade. It took place between Africa, America, and Europe. You understand? Slaves were taken from Africa. They were taken to work on plantation, particularly sugarcane plantation and cotton plantation. They would work on this plantation. The raw products were then fetched from America, taken to Europe to make quality products like wool, like clothes, sugarcane, sugar now. And then it would continue like this. It took place for very many centuries, very many years. Generations after generations were born into slavery. Up to date, some African American names are names that are identifiable to slavery because it was names that slave owners gave to their slaves. You understand? It was up until the French Revolution that we had the mass end of slavery in America. and the Civil War in America as well. What follows is, I can't really understand the full depth of slavery because I didn't test it. I'm not part of that society as well. The only person who can give the correct narrative of the effects of slavery is an African American. And that credit should be given to them. The person who also can tell the story of colonialism and tell the feeling. This is telling a story and passing the feeling. The person who can do both of these is an African on the part of colonialism. And now this story, this woman is going to tell us how it felt like, or rather how it feels like up to date being in America as an African American and suffering because people from there believe that your parents, or rather your great-grandparents, came there to work for their great-grandfathers, great-grandmothers. So they feel entitled, like you are still their slaves and you are just a slave that escaped. So there is no that single unity. There's really no love. And this woman goes to the extent of, remember I told you the slavery and colonialism were done by the white imperialist. The white imperialist has an agenda, or he runs through the operating system of white supremacy. White supremacy is the concept that white deserves privilege. White is the greatest, how do you call it, race in the world. White deserves the best. White, all the best places goes for the white, and all the worst places goes for the black and the non-white. You understand? Now, there's nobody who can explain this better than an African American. Now, this sister is going to tell us some of the effects that are being felt by African Americans of who faced slavery, and how it feels like to live in the USA today. So without further ado, I want us to jump into this video. Listen to what the sister is going to say, and then by the end of the video, I'll share with you my critical analysis of the video.
Long history of ingrained concepts of white supremacy and white superiority have made all white people racist. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat that. All white people are racist. I know some of you are going to be turning off your computers right now. Ta-ta, bitch. All white people are racist. And me personally, I generally assume that all white people are racist until they prove otherwise to me. You know, I know I'm going to have commenters that are like, well, that's prejudice, and you're the real racist, and So I'm going to go ahead and address that now. It is not prejudiced to say that all white people are racist, because it has been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that we are living in a racist, white supremacist society. Okay? Now you can believe that or not believe that. That's your prerogative. But it's been proven that we are living in a racist and also sexist white supremacist society. You know, this means that every single white person born into said racist white supremacist society is indoctrinated practically, you know, from birth with certain ideas about race. Through it, you know, be it through, you know, unconscious biases or implicit biases, or, you know, outright, you know, just straight up no holds barred racism. And every single white person, even you that thinks you're the cool white person, born into this society holds certain ideas about white supremacy until a certain point in life when they become aware of this and hopefully begin to work to unlearn it. All of you. Every single white person. There are no exceptions, you know? And that's not prejudice, because prejudice by definition is a prejudgment, you know, or a forming of an opinion before becoming aware of the relevant facts, all right? I'm clearly not talking about that. I have formed my informed opinion. It is an informed opinion, and it is based off of facts. What I'm saying is fact. We live in a racist white supremacist society. All white people born into that society are a product of their environment. They are all racist until they reach a certain point where they become aware of this and hopefully work to unlearn it. That's everyone. That's all of you. Every single last one. So now I know that some of you are going to have this, you know, knee-jerk reaction to the word racism. Like I'm saying all white people want to, like, eat black babies and, like, feed them to alligators, which white people did do. Please go Google it. So, you know, they would use black babies as alligator bait to catch alligators in Florida. I'll include a link if you guys want to read it. They really did do that. I'm not just saying that, you know, they really did it. So I just want to make it crystal clear that I don't think all white people are bad or evil. I might say all the time, like, white people are demons and I fucking hate them and this and that. And that's normally me speaking out of rage or anger or some type of emotion because of something that has happened. But I don't think that every single white person on the planet is bad or evil. No. You know, I just believe that all white people suffer from the disease of racism. And honestly, that's all of us. And black people, it manifests a little differently, like with colorism, which I did make my video about last week or whenever that was. With us, it manifests a little differently with colorism, but with white people, it's like straight up racism. Like, y'all suffer from the disease of racism. You live in a white supremacist racist society that instills in you from birth the belief that you're better than everyone else. And it also, you know, insulates you from race-based stress and provides you, as white people, with a fantasy world to retreat to in order to avoid confronting their own racism. This is a concept which I've talked about previously that's called white fragility. And it's a whole society that was created to really perpetuate, you know, the cycles of white supremacy and the idea of white supremacy. And you guys can just retreat. You can turn on the TV at any moment and watch an all-white show. You can go to the movies at any moment and watch an all-white movie. You can pick up a book and read an all-white book. Studies have shown that 70 to 80% of white people have an all-white circle, which means they go to all-white schools, which means they work at all-white jobs. Every person in their family is white. You know, you can go to certain places in the country and still in 2015 meet white people that have never, ever, ever met or seen a black person in real life. Okay? Our whole society contributes to this concept of white supremacy and white superiority, and all white people, you know, are a product of this environment, all of you. So in addition to white fragility, white people also benefit from concepts of, you know, white skin privilege. Period. I have people that always want to argue with me about this. There is no argument. You don't have a leg to stand on. White people benefit from white skin privilege. They're treated better. They go to better schools, they eat better food, they get better jobs, and they have disproportionately better wealth and health than black people. This includes poor whites. A dirt poor white person. Studies show that they statistically still have better chances than a rich upper class black person, okay? Because no one knows that the upper class black person is upper class just by looking at them. All they see is black skin, and black skin is inherently in this country and in other countries around the world linked to being poor, to being criminal, to all these different stereotypes. You could have someone that's dirt poor going to, you know, the store in Belgium where Oprah Winfrey tried to buy the bag. And if they're white and they're dressed a certain way, they're not going to get any pushback. They could be fucking poor as hell. Everything they have on could be stolen, but they're not going to get any pushback because they're white. Meanwhile, you have Oprah, who's a fucking billionaire, who's going to get pushback because she's black. White people, excuse me, you have white skin privilege. This is not debatable. I'm not debating this with people. People love to argue with me about privilege as if it's debatable, but it's not. Every white person living in a country that has been colonized by white people, where whites are the dominant group, which is a lot of motherfucking countries, y'all all benefit from white skin privilege, but especially here in the United States. Here in the United States specifically, white people benefit from being white in a society that was built off of slavery and the denigration of one race for the advancement of another, okay? You benefit from entire systems created to maintain that sense of superiority. And there have been countless studies that prove this beyond a shadow of a doubt. So to attempt to say otherwise, black people and white people, is to just be in a complete state of denial. You have your heads buried in the sand, your children, you have childish logic, you know, and all you, but I don't have privilege, I don't have privilege, I actually had to get a job when I was 15, I don't have privilege. All y'all white folks can just, If y'all didn't leave when I said you're all racist, y'all can go ahead and dip out now. Don't let the knob hit your booty when the door closed, okay? So moving on, basically, in her lectures, Dr. Joy DeGruy asks, what happens to a person that has spent years, you know, essentially, you know, they've been living detached from reality, and they've been living in a bubble of privilege. You know, what happens after they spend years and decades and then centuries that way? And her post-traumatic slave syndrome theory posits that, you know, not only are Black people essentially dealing with centuries of unhealed trauma from being oppressed, but also that white people are dealing with centuries of unexamined pathology from being the oppressor. You know, which when I got to that part of the lecture, I had to pause it and like go sit quietly in the dark for a while to just like process, because I had never really thought about it. I had started thinking about it, which is why I made that rant video. So to hear some really complex, in-depth theories, really, it was like having an epiphany, you know, like what does happen when you have centuries of unexamined pathology from oppressing other people, you know? White people literally have centuries of oppression under their belts, you know? Centuries of rape, centuries of murder, centuries of pillaging, centuries of plundering, centuries of committing acts of genocide, you know, centuries of committing literal crimes against humanity, you know, wiping out whole entire cultures and civilizations, going back to even before, you know, American chattel slavery with Manifest Destiny and the White Man's Burden, and, you know, coming to the Americas and just completely obliterating the indigenous populations. You know, white people are the ones that even created the whole concept of race in the 1700s, right? And then race was used as a tool, you know, to dominate people and to oppress them, you know, and to escape the dissonance that was created by brutalizing other human beings, you know. And Dr. Joy talks a lot about dissonance, as I mentioned in my other video. You know, cognitive dissonance, which is basically that uncomfortable feeling that you get when you're doing something wrong or hypocritical. You know, white people create a lot of dissonance in their actions, and they're trying to move away from it, but they can't. Everything they do only creates more and more dissonance, you know? It's like a vicious cycle, right? And Dr. Joy says that, you know, the first thing you must do to remove dissonance is you must justify your behavior. So what do? You create the concept of race. Oh, okay. So in I want to say it was like 1721, you know, some white guy, I can't think of his name right now. Dr. Joy talks extensively about him in her lectures. You know, they call him the modern father of anthropology and shit like that. You know, he basically traveled all over the world and said, okay, there's 4 races: white, Black, Asian, and Native. You know, just the native, the various native people that he saw. And then he goes on to say that, you know, and then he went on to kind of give each different race these different characteristics. None of it was based on any type of science. He basically just made this shit up. And this is, you know, stuff that we're still hearing, you know, today. It really became ingrained in our culture and within our society. You know, he said that whites or Caucasians, he called them Caucasians because when he traveled to Caucasus, the mountains of Caucasus, he felt like the people there were extremely beautiful and like that they were the most beautiful people ever. So he called, and they were white, so he called them Caucasians. And then he went on to say, you know, surely civilization started here in the mountains of Caucasus in Europe, when actually, no, bitch. Civilization started in East Africa. Check your facts. Check your facts. Anyways, so he goes on to give white people and Black people and Asians and natives all these different characteristics. You know, white people are amazing. They're wonderful. They're beautiful. They're glorious. They're smart. They're this. They're that. Oh, but those niggas, man, they are lazy, they are dirty, they are criminal, they are lustful, and those fucking Asians, man, all they do is fucking sit around and think all day. They are overly critical, they are overly this, they are overly that. Fucking those natives, they lazy as shit. They don't want to do nothing. They just want to sit around all day and do nothing. And these are things that you will still hear echoed today in 2015 from the 1700s all the way to today, right? Anyways, so like I was saying, Dr. Joy says that the first thing you must do to remove cognitive dissonance is you must justify your behavior. The second thing you must do, once you have justified your behavior, is you have to relabel the people you are oppressing in a way that justifies your behavior towards them. So now you've justified your behavior. Well, they're just black. And, you know, blacks are slaves. They're not human. They're less than human. They're animals. They're lazy. They're soulless. They don't have souls. They can't feel anything. They're criminals. You know, they went out of their way to dehumanize us in order to make what they were doing to us acceptable. But as I said, the more you go, it was like the more they went out of their way to dehumanize us and debase us to get away from dissonance, the more dissonance they ended up creating. They just kept on creating more dissonance, creating more dissonance, more dissonance. Because when you dehumanize someone in order to abuse them in such a way as to enslave them, murder them, and rape them, you are dehumanizing yourself. You have essentially stripped yourself of your own humanity. Okay? And here we are in 2015, and white people have stripped themselves of their humanity. They don't have it. They've stripped themselves of the ability to feel, especially for black people, but mostly for anyone that's not white. They cannot feel. It has been proven statistically that white people lack empathy for others that are not white, and they have, you know, trouble feeling. They don't feel. They don't feel it. They literally, over centuries, bred the humanity out of themselves. And I 100% mean that, you know? Because how can a person watch a lynching and feel nothing, right? How can these white people watch a 12-year-old black boy, Tamir Rice, be shot in the stomach and feel nothing? And to even go one step further, but to blame the child for getting shot, or to leave some type of, you know, nasty, racist comment that's supposedly a joke, you know, and as we see, or to make, you know, excuses to explain away a group of 19 and 20 and 21-year-old white boys thinking about how they want to lynch niggers, okay, when lynchings caused 4,000 deaths, all right, during the Great Migration. How in 2015 can white people sit there and say and do those things? Because they don't feel. They don't feel for me. They don't feel for you, black person. They don't feel it. It's literally been bred out of them over the course of hundreds of years of violence. And Dr. Joy theorizes that they can't feel, because if they could feel, what would they feel, right? Knowing what they've done, they'd fucking crack. Okay, white fragility. They've been so insulated from race-based stress and living in this fucking world of denial that they will probably snap, the majority of them, you know? White people have well over 500 years of pathology and emotional baggage that they...
Now, the ideas that the sister has represented are the ideas that the professor, Dr. Joy DeGruy, had pronounced in a very, very popular speech that he made. I think I also made a video on this speech that Dr. DeGruy had made. Despite what she said, Dr. DeGruy just presented the struggles of the African Americans and the struggles they face all over the world. You understand? Because PTSS, which is post-traumatic slave syndrome, is something which African Americans are suffering up to date. They have problems with identity. There's a lot of identity issues with African Americans, you understand? And also those other people, because America is a continent, or rather a country. US is a country of different races and ethnicities. Now, including the black people. So the non-black people have always thought of them as superior than the black person, and this is also part of the post-traumatic stress syndrome. The sister went ahead and said that all white people are racist. She said that, and maybe it's true, because white supremacy is real. White supremacy is very, very real. It might be that the level of racism is different, but it's still the same. Even here in Africa, we still have some kind of PTCS. C for colonialism, S was for slavery, remember? C is for colonialism. I am the one who put the C there, not Dr. DeGruy. So you may be in a line, you are forming a line, maybe you are going to Chicken Inn or KFC to have some chips and chicken, and you have some white person behind you. You know, you might find a police guard, or rather a security guard, come pick the person, put them in front, or the white person can just pull themselves out of there, get there, and be served. In fact, the way they talk to him is very, very different from the way they talk to you. I appreciate and I love it when people respect other people. But respect should be paramount. Respect should cut across everyone. You understand? But now, we know at the expense of a white person is being shown respect, and a black person is spoken to like just a casual person, or sometimes they can insult one another, but you can never see this happening between the black and the white. These are just symptoms of post-traumatic colonialism syndrome, colonialism and post-traumatic slavery syndrome, which people are facing all around. The sister was very eloquent in sharing this information, and I hope you learned something from this video. And kindly, I don't want to impose my ideas on you as well. I want you to go to the comment section, share your ideas, and let's have a discussion on the comment section on the matters of Africa and why we think PTSS can be done away with. Do you think we can do away with PTSS, or do you think it's something that came to stay? Share your thoughts on the comment section, where we will also have a deep critical analysis on the comment section. So do subscribe to the channel. I'll so much appreciate.